Hello everyone, welcome back to ShootOut and welcome back to a new video. We hope all of you have been well. George, how are you doing, my man?
Mate, I'm doing good now. I'm apologising to everybody and to you on behalf of my absence in recent weeks, but we are here now, we're back. So let's not talk about the past, apart from the Premier League past of the past 72 hours, but we're back. ShootOut is back. How are
100%,
you, mate?
100%. I'm good, Matt. Well, I would have been better if we're going to focus on a certain result later on, which we will, and there's going to be another video talking about that certain result, which is none other than Chelsea-Arsenal, so make sure you're there for that. But we're going to give you guys the Premier League roundup for this match week, which has just ended, and let's get ourselves cracking, starting off with big Merseyside derby, Liverpool versus Everton, which took place early Saturday lunchtime. Liverpool 2-0 winners. Were you expecting this, or were you expecting an Everton breakthrough?
To be honest, I think when you look at the balance of the game, I think the red card changed a lot. But I think when you look at both teams, for Everton, it's kind of a free hit. They go to Anfield. They're expected to concede goals. They're not really scoring loads. They had a good week the week before. But I think Liverpool weren't that impressive. I was actually really impressed with Everton, you know. I think they dug in. I think it was a quintessential Sean Dyche performance, and I think they can actually go away feeling a bit hard done by a 2-0. What do you think?
Look, hard done by 2-0, 100%. And look, there's the whole controversy about whether there should have been a red and this, that, and the other. I mean, Everton did end up going down to 10 men towards the end, but if Liverpool should have had Konate get sent off, and that was still 0-0 before Liverpool turned them over. So, I don't know. Do you think the game should be replayed?
I mean, at this rate, we're going to have to flip and play a season once every 2 years, aren't we? With the amount of games that should be replayed for good. Do you know what? Like, it could actually be quite fun, because I reckon if you actually then win the league after not seeing anyone win the league for 2 years, it could actually be quite exciting. But you know what? I'm not for all of this. I think it's a video that we probably could have done a few weeks ago when it was even more pressing. But I just think, look, if you're going to have all of these introductions to football, which kind of changes the shape and the balance and the flow of what we have fallen in love with when it comes to the way that football is managed minute by minute in a game, just flip and get it right. Do you know what I mean? Like, the more people that have a say about decisions, the easier it should be within the rules and laws of the game to come to unanimous decisions. So
100%,
this replaying rubbish, as much as it's funny, you just can't.
But look, you know what? Klopp's opened the can of worms here. But I do think Everton were hard done by at 0-0. I think if that decision goes their way, who knows what would have happened. But Liverpool, in the end, showing their class. And by class, I just mean just much more ability in order to get the job done. Mo Salah showing up, and they get 2-0 win. So Liverpool get that win. Everton, unfortunately, under Sean Dyche, we're very sorry. You know, as much as I feel for you, but it is what it is. So 2-0 winners. Any other comments?
No, I think Liverpool are just ticking over, really. I think they're kind of, at this point, the league's pretty open. And I don't think they've really shown their best yet, but I could also say the same about other teams that we'll go into later. But it's close. It's very close.
Yep, it is. It is. So that's 2-0 to Liverpool. Everton, definitely hard done by, but they leave with nothing. Moving on to the next game, which is Brentford versus Burnley. Now here we've got another red card, and trust me, the red cards galore is going to go on this video because it happened in basically nearly every single flipping game. But Brentford 3, Burnley 0. Your thoughts?
I think Brentford are one of those teams this year who have also been a bit unlucky. I think it's only their second win of the season, and they've drawn a lot of games. They've looked solid. They've scored a lot of goals. Burnley, I'd be seriously worried. I think they were both one of the teams when we talked at the beginning of the season, we thought, well, Burnley are going to be up there in terms of trying to battle maybe for top half. And it's just not worked. I think, do you know what? It just shows the gap in class. Like, if you go down from the Premier League, it's not really a fair reflection of like your 5-year plan. If you go down and then come straight back up, there's absolutely no guarantees as to what that is going to look like. Companies come in, they've played different kind of football to what we have been used to from Burnley. But I think Burnley thrived off the fact that they were just hated for being a bit gross, hated for being a bit boring. Do you know what I mean? And now this league is too competitive for them to have enough quality to be able to compete with teams like Brentford, who show year on year with a bit of stability that it's manageable to play at this level and sustain it.
No, completely. And with that reputation that Burnley used to have, which, look, people, I think, hated Burnley for that. I never really did. I looked at Burnley and went, yeah, that's your identity. You know, that's who you are. And you're that team that just makes teams suffer. And under Sean Dyche at that time, you just knew what you were coming up against. And now, as you've said, they come up from the Championship with company, and there was a big expectation because they played so beautifully in the Championship with 100 points and whatnot, that they would come to the Premier League and they would kill it with their style of football. But they're not. They're really not. And it's getting to a point in the season now where you'd think that they would have started ticking over. But against Brentford, it's just domination. Brentford, for a team, you know, that isn't exactly high up in the table, I thought it would have been a bit more competitive. But Burnley, I think, need to take a look at themselves. And they went down to 10 men in this game, and that definitely didn't help them. And even that, they were already 3-0 down. So they're not exactly helping themselves there. Burnley, as I agree, in a bit of trouble. Do you think that will continue, or do you think they'll find their form eventually before we move?
I think they're going to struggle, you know. And I think when we look at the next two teams, Bournemouth and Wolves, I think that for me shows why they'll struggle. Because if you look at Wolves, Bournemouth 1, Wolves 2, all of a sudden, they're just seeming to be not only very difficult to beat, but they're finding ways to win. They moved up the table a lot. I thought Wolves were going to get relegated. I think they're unbeaten now in the last 4 games, 2 wins, 2 draws, and another good away win. And they're getting their strikers starting to score now, which has been their problem last season. They just couldn't find the net. But now, Cunha's on the score sheet, Kaladzic as well, 2 strikers. They're doing okay.
No, Wolves absolutely dominated that game. We're talking about another red card. Bournemouth didn't exactly help themselves. It was 1-1. They end up going down to 10. They give more room to Wolves, and Wolves are already doing a good job by that point, and managed to get the winner towards the end. I agree with you. Wolves are one of those teams that have managed to turn it around. I don't see the same thing happening with a Burnley, but Wolves right now, very, very decent. Bournemouth at home dropping points. It's testament to the fact that Wolves have managed to get themselves to turn it around. So fair play, but once again, we're talking another red card. So Bournemouth, well done to yourselves for that. But they lose 2-1. The next one, Nottingham Forest, Luton Town. Now, this is exactly what we were talking about in terms of the levels from the Championship up to the Premier League, because these are 2 teams that were in the Championship not too long ago. And you find them facing each other, and it's a stalemate. 2-2. Any comments?
I think for Luton, this is a massive point, and for Forest, it's 2 massive points dropped. Because when you look at the teams like Wolves, who have been up in this league for a while, they have the ability to come into a bit of form, find ways to win. The way that they were passing against Bournemouth as well, to bring it back to that as well. So many passes, double the amount that Bournemouth had, with good accuracy with those. For Forest, when they lose 2 points in the way that they did so late in the game, that kind of result can be one that they look back on at the end of the season, if they're in a relegation scrap for the last 6 or 7 games again, and be like, that's where we're still not experienced at this level. Whereas for Luton, I think from what we've seen so far, it's simply a case of any little scraps they can get, they're just trying to claw away at that derby record at this point. So I think it doesn't really matter that much. It's a big point, potentially, but I don't see them building on it. But for Forest, 2 massive points dropped.
Yeah, you're right. 2 massive points dropped. And if we're talking about that Derby team, we're going to come to the Derby team and mention them a little later, because something needs to be said about a certain team in the Premier League that's currently sitting bottom. But Nottingham Forest were cruising up until the last, 5 minutes, Chris Wood getting the goals. It was looking nice. Nottingham Forest in control. They're at home. It's a 2-0 win. They decide to do almost, not almost like what Chelsea done. We'll come to Chelsea in a bit. But towards the end, Luton Town, they get the turnaround, and in the 92nd minute, they managed to get the equaliser. Fair play to Luton, because Luton were that team that I think many people were looking at the start and thinking, yeah, you got no chance. Whereas right now, I feel like they're showing a little more grit than they did at the beginning, and they're starting to at least somewhat click in some areas compared to how they were at the start. So they've gone to Forest and got themselves a point towards the end there. Absolutely fair play. Very much deserved. But Nottingham Forest, I agree. 2 points dropped, without question. Manchester City. Now, this is the team that everyone's looking at, I think, to just keep doing what they're doing. But they're making life a little more harder for themselves compared to how they used to. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think last season you look at Erling Haaland, you see that incredible partnership that him and De Bruyne had from literally minute number one, and everything makes sense as to why they were just so good, why they won a treble. You take Kevin De Bruyne out of that team, and the whole Haaland being the focal point, bagging multiple goals a game, scoring every game thing. Yes, he scores what proves to be the winning goal in this one. But I think, once again, Guardiola is showing with the faith that he's put in Alvarez this season. I think it's 17 goals in his last 17 games or something. To have two players in the modern game that are able to turn over this amount of goals so consistently is why that even though when I watched that game against Brighton, I had a brilliant Saturday night, by the way. I watched basically every single Premier League match. I think
fair play.
This is the kind of game where I looked at it beforehand and I thought, City lost 2 away games in a row. Yes, it's at the Etihad, but look how good Brighton are against the big teams. They grew into the game massively. The red card that City had was obviously a little bit pointless in terms of affecting the game because it was the 95th minute for Akanji. But I just think it's one of those wins for City where they've had to dig, they've had to grind, and now it's not just about Haaland. If you take the De Bruyne part out the equation, they're now adding Alvarez consistently now for a long period of time with the goals. So I still think that from this point on, they're probably going to go and win it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think. And look, right now, as you said, the point that you made was a good one. Man City still somehow find a way to get those goals despite, and it's a big loss for them when there's no KDB. You wouldn't have thought that just removing one player like that would have really affected the way that City play, but it has, and it's affected Erling Haaland. But as you've said, they've got an Alvarez, they've got other players that they can turn to, and even so, Erling Haaland still scores. So fair play to Manchester City. It just shows the quality of depth that they have. By the way. Beautiful finish, absolutely beautiful finish. Yeah. But Brighton, and fair play to them on this occasion because even though they lost, but towards the end they did show. I don't want to sound like Brendan Rodgers, but they showed character, and they managed to get themselves at least to a respectable position before losing the game. But do you think that they've got a problem in terms of managing the games that they're having to play with Europe included?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the first time that they've had to be in both competitions. They're in the Europa League, so it's not like they're playing against dead teams in the Conference League. As Mark Goldbridge would say on his FIFA watch-alongs, you just skip them because Man United will beat every team in the Conference League. I think Brighton would be exactly the same. I think they're playing against tough opposition in these European games. And I do think, again, people were like, oh, don't worry about Brighton if they lose Caicedo. But, look how many goals they're conceding this season. And look at how Caicedo is now starting to show for Chelsea that, yeah, he can be that absolute barrier, that impenetrable barrier in front of a defence. Not totally impenetrable. But I think when you lose a player like that, there's only so many seasons in a row that Brighton are going to be able to lose their star man for massive sums of money before, especially when you add European football into that mix, you're going to see inconsistencies. And I think at the minute, we're seeing that in the disparity between how well they are going forward and how poor they can be sometimes at the back. But it is Man City. So, I mean, everyone expects to concede 2 or 3 goals minimum against City every time they play. So,
no, absolutely. And, I mean, because of that, Brighton now find themselves 7th. And they've got to be careful because if they drop points any further, they could find themselves in a position that not many people were expecting them to be in. You know, they thought that maybe Brighton would start ticking over and, be on the same form that they were last season. So they've got to make sure that they start picking up some wins.
Chelsea
they've got enough
coming,
quality.
Mate.
They're able... we'll come to Chelsea in a bit. But Newcastle, Crystal Palace. Now, this was a whitewash. Have you got any words on Newcastle? Newcastle are back, aren't they? They're on form.
Jacob Murphy. What on earth? This guy, I honestly, even last year, I was like, nah, he's a championship player. Jacob Murphy is absolutely class, by the way.
He is, isn't he?
And I think the thing with Newcastle that I find so fascinating is the fact that when you look at the business they did in the summer, you're looking at it and wondering, how are they ever going to be able to top last season? I was surprised that they even got top 4 last season. I didn't think they'd spent enough. But this year, they just... Anthony Gordon, mate, is absolutely class as well. And I give Jacob Murphy the credit because for me, that's a shock. Gordon, I mean, I was happy he didn't go to Chelsea for the money that we were touted to be spending on him at that time. But now they've just got players all over the field that are coming up with goals. And I honestly think when you look at... I'll bring up the PSG game as well, which would have also been great to talk about on Shootout, but we'll talk about Newcastle in the Champions League moving forward. St James's Park is winning them game after game after game. And when you're a player, I think, and you're out there and you score a couple of early goals, like Jacob Murphy scored in the 4th minute, I think that atmosphere and that love that Newcastle fans are experiencing for what they're witnessing from their team after this long, it's just exciting the players beyond belief to a point where it's like, you know what, we are going to entertain you and make sure you get your money's worth. And every time they step out at that stadium right now, they're just blistering. Like, they were amazing, particularly in that first half. And Palace are a tough team to beat too, so it's an amazing result.
It's true. Palace aren't easy to break down, but Newcastle done it so swiftly and they've done it so early, and that's one thing that you have to do, man. You have to be able to kill a game. And they done it after what? 15 minutes. So Newcastle, especially since that PSG win, because they were absolutely phenomenal on that night. And it's just created a new buzz, a new sense of life in them, where they've really managed to regain the form they were on last season, and now it looked like they're starting to exceed it a little bit. So fair play to Newcastle. I expect them to do big things, and watch out for them in the January window, because they're only going to start reinforcing that team even further. So Newcastle are definitely going to start being a team to watch in order to be, a legit threat in the Premier League. Fair play to Newcastle, and I love what they're doing, because they're really building it properly. So fair play. Beautiful result.
Yep.
Chelsea 2, Arsenal 2?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about it in another video, so let's just brush past it. But I'll give a 15-second review, and I think you should do the same, and then we'll make everyone watch the other video. I'm going to say 2 points lost, but absolutely, in my head, Chelsea are back. That was less than 15 seconds, but that's all I'm going to say.
Fair play. I mean, we did get the win, but there's a lot of positives to take. That's on reflection. At the time, I still think it was absolutely ridiculous to throw the game away in the way that we did. But it's not the end of the world. However, I'm still hurting. We will be doing a video in more detail about Chelsea itself, so make sure you're going to be there for that. That's the next one. Sheffield United 1, Manchester United 2. Now, this result, I think, is too kind to Manchester United. And talking about Sheffield United, I mentioned Derby County earlier on. What are your implications on Sheffield United and the way that they're dropping points now? And do you think Manchester United were even convincing enough, even though they won?
No, Man United weren't convincing enough, and it took an absolute thunderbolt from Dallas. A great winner. And I think that's what Man United fans will be happy with. It's like you don't expect Dalot to maybe be that guy. But for Sheffield United, I'm not surprised about any of this, because I think the way that team needed reinforcements at the start of the season, and then it was never given to them, I think they just gave up on being in the Premier League before a ball was even kicked. And I think that was probably, even though as a player coming up from the Championship, you don't want your team to sign 20 players to displace you and then you're back playing in the Championship for bloody Rotherham or whatever. I think they're in League One, whatever. But I think the ambition at Sheffield United was never there. So how can the players reflect that in a game where they're playing against a team who aren't playing very well? It's Manchester United. I think at Bramall Lane, maybe 20 years ago, they got an amazing result against Man United. They're trying to replicate that or whatever. And it's just of course, they're not going to. That is a Championship team that we're looking at here. So I just don't see any improvement coming for them.
No, you're completely right. If I'm going to talk about Sheffield United very quickly, I mean, they're currently sitting bottom and a clear bottom. They've lost their last 5. They've only got 1 point after 9 games. This is really, really on track to even being worse than Derby County. And we mentioned Derby earlier on. Right now, they don't look like they can get a lifeline from anywhere. So Sheffield United, without question, unless a miracle happens, are going to be going down with ease. And in that game itself against United, look, I'm not looking to Sheffield United because I think Sheffield United, in the context that in that game in isolation, done well. It's Manchester United. Man United are an example of a team. No, exactly. And even when you look statistically, less possession, but they were more effective. And this is the point I want to make about Man United. Man United are a team that are able to keep the ball, but don't look like they're doing anything with it. You know, they have control of the possession, but there's no substance. And I feel like there's external factors. Man United are a very unstable club right now. But on the pitch, there's no threat. Except for right now, Scott McTominay is in the form of his life. But apart from that, what do you think of United and the way that they're moving? Because it's not convincing. They got the win, fair play, but it's just not sustainable.
I just think the way that they've done business doesn't make sense. Like, I've watched a lot of Man United this season, and when I saw Amrabat against Sheffield United and he hit the bar, I was like, I forgot that you even bought this guy. Like, what is it? What has Amrabat brought into this team? When you think about like what we know from Amrabat, from his time in Serie A for Morocco, whatever, and then you add that into like a little Casemiro pie in the middle, do you know what I mean? You're thinking, maybe, but I just think Ten Hag at the moment is riding his luck massively. And if this game would have finished 1-1 and Dalot doesn't pull the rabbit out the flipping hat, then I think the conversations about him just get louder and louder and louder. But because they managed to somehow play very average again, bang average, and get a win, he's kind of off the hook again. Which I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Because, like, they keep on getting results, United. They don't keep on, but they're getting enough results where it's like, as a Chelsea fan, I can't sit here and be like, yeah, we're flipping amazing and you're proverbially shite. But I'm just not convinced, and I think it will come unstuck. I mean, they've got City at the weekend. City are due a thumping to remind us of who they are, and I would not be surprised if that comes from Man United this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I've said, I think there's a lot of external factors. I don't see Man United coming out of the situation anytime soon because of what's happening. The Glazers, Ratcliffe, all of this madness that's going on at the moment. And the United fans are just not happy. So, we'll see what happens. But it's not looking very, very positive at the moment. But they got the win and fair play because 3 points are 3 points no matter what. We got to remember that. Talking about 3 points are 3 points. West Ham just had absolutely no chance against Aston Villa, but Aston Villa are a team that know what they're doing, aren't they? 4-1 winners against West Ham.
Mate, I think Villa Park might be the hardest place to go in the Premier League right now. I don't want to play Villa away at all. I'm so glad we've already lost to them, the Stamford Bridge. They are just so good.
There you are, that says it all. Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Like, all over the pitch, they've just got quality. Do you know what I mean? And Ollie Watkins, what a finish that is. Like, that was Cristiano Ronaldo. Couple of step overs onto his left foot. You think it's a weak side, and then bang. Like, the bloke is a machine right now. I'd take him at Chelsea. Just saying.
Oh, 100%. And even not just Ollie Watkins, testament to Douglas Luiz as well. Aston Villa are a team that's clicking, you know, and I want to say a huge credit to Unai Emery. Because the way that he's transformed this team and given them an identity and got them playing a certain way, and it's been completely effective. And Aston Villa right now are one of the most informed teams in the Premier League. You know, you talk about them, you talk about Newcastle now, you talk about Tottenham, we'll come to them. Aston Villa are in that bracket, hands down. And they absolutely dispatched off West Ham. And West Ham are decent. This is why it was surprising for them to get a 4-1 win. Yeah? Absolutely. So fair play to Aston Villa, absolutely cruising and doing fantastic. And West Ham, look, I don't feel like West Ham need to feel bad. They haven't been hard done by. I think it's just the golfing class with Aston Villa at the moment, the form that they're in. So that is that. Talking about massive form. I hate to talk about this, but this is incredible. Ange Postecoglou is right now, I think he's accrued the most points that a Premier League manager has ever after 9 games.
I mean,
it's incredible.
I mean, I think it's been like 5 weeks. I think we've been off the channel, and in that time, I thought, even though I didn't expect to be off for 5 weeks, I did not expect Tottenham to be sat at the top of the league, unbeaten, with Postecoglou still getting the praise that he absolutely flipping deserves. And that's the bit that 100%. Makes this just that much more jarring. It's that I flipping hate Tottenham. Like, just despise everything about their existence. But they're just so good. And it's him.
They are.
Like, he has literally come in, dropped Maddison in there and been like, no Harry Kane? No problem. Don't worry. I don't know why I did that voice. because he's definitely an Aussie, mate. But he's amazing. He's right up there. He's class,
what's
bro,
his name turned into? Angelo Postecoglou.
I don't know. Angelo Postecoglou.
No, listen, fair play to Tottenham. And look, you're hearing a couple of Chelsea fans, right, who would love to see Tottenham get relegated if it were a possibility. But we have to put hands up and say what's right and be non-biased here. Tottenham sitting top of the league after 9 games with the way that they're playing, still unbeaten, amount of goals scored, the amount of goals conceded, getting the results, playing fantastic. Postecoglou's coming in, looks like he's been in the Premier League for 10 years. Can they keep it up? That's a different story, because that's not easy, and Tottenham haven't been in that position for decades, right, if we're being completely honest. But you've got to start somewhere, and they have done absolutely incredible, and the win they got yesterday was just so effective. They were so ruthless in the way that in the way that they were playing and the manners that they were playing in. There were your words about the way that they played yesterday against Fulham and the way they got the job done.
I mean, I think it's one of those games where, once again, as every game has gone on, you're seeing a style, you're seeing a consistency in the way that they just absolutely refuse to change when it comes to how we're going to win. Fulham weren't awful. Fulham aren't a bad team. They like to have a lot of the ball. They like to pass it around. They're very accurate with what they do with the ball. But it's just, you're absolutely right. When you've got 2 players like James Maddison, who just needed to be a slight level above what he was having to work with at Leicester to show how good he can be. You add someone like Son in there, and I think also it's a case of people say, well, what would it have been like if Kane was there? I don't think this would work as well if Kane was there. And the reason I think that is because sometimes they were so reliant on Kane, and it was his goals that kept them kind of like even a top half team for a few years. But what they are now is a team. They're not reliant on one. They've got so many players now that can deliver. And I think they're just so clinical. They keep grinding out results. Not even grinding out results, playing really well. And when they do have to grind, they grind. And they're unbeaten. And I think when you're riding a wave like this, and again, I hate this flipping Robbie Williams remake they've made of this song, but everything about Tottenham right now just reeks of togetherness and reeks of something that is just going to go from strength to strength, and I flipping hate it. No comment.
It's true, and no, look, absolutely fair play to them. As you said, without Harry Kane, you would have thought that they would have sunk. But Son has really come into his own. I thought he'd struggle without Kane, but he's blossomed. Maddison is fitting like a glove. We're talking about even some of the other players. Van der Ven. Vicario in goal, who was absolutely sensational yesterday. It's just players and a manager you just didn't really think would click, but they have in the most subtle way. So absolutely fantastic from Tottenham, and fair play. They're sitting top of the league, 2 points clear as we end. And your final thoughts, final words going into the next video is Chelsea Arsenal, so make sure you're there for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think realistically, I'm excited about the Premier League again now, and it always comes back to Chelsea. I feel like a game like that, because I watched all of the games at the weekend, because in Bali they don't have a 3 o'clock blackout, so we get to watch all of the games. We're in a big sports bar, all the screens are on, so I was kind of just like flicking between them all. And I think sometimes it takes a really entertaining Chelsea game when things have been so crap for a while, and then a load of other good games as well, to get you excited about football again. And I think this weekend absolutely facilitated that for me, mate. And I'm buzzing to be back on air. We're going to be predicting this week as well. Not just reviewing today. We're going to be going into this weekend's game
100%
later on in the week. Good to be back, bro.
It definitely is. It definitely is. It's been a while, but we're back. It's going to be back better than ever, and I am looking forward to what's coming. So make sure you guys are all going to be here. Hit the subscribe button. Do not forget that. Check out links in the description as well. And myself and George will see you on the next one. Thank you very much for watching.
Me, myself,
see you lot in a bit.
And I. Ciao.